Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, welcome to Dom Sub Devotion. My name is Andrew, and this is episode 84 of the Dom Sub Devotion podcast. Sometimes it's still amazing to me that we've recorded 84 of these things now. And this is going to be a solo episode. And I'm recording this one solo because after last week's episode that I recorded with a friend of mine named Christina, who goes by Solar Feminine Arts on Instagram, we talked a lot in that episode about her pulling back from her work so that she could experience what it is to really be a wife, a mother, and to come deeper into her union, into her relationship, and how the ways that she was showing up to her work were really keeping her away from and out of experiencing the fullness of the relationship that she was in and wanted to be in. And as that episode came out, I asked our Instagram followers, would you like to hear an update on how this is playing out for Dawn and I? And I got so many yeses that I realized I needed to record this episode right away and get it out to you, because there's a lot that's evolved for Dawn and I. And when she used to be a part of this podcast every week, we were kind of constantly updating everyone with our relationship, with our dynamic, with how things were evolving for each of us individually and together. And if you're newer here, or in case you don't remember, Dawn reached a point about the first of the year where she had this really just deep knowing that hit her. It hit her one morning over breakfast, and there was no denying it. There was no questioning it. She just needed to be done with what she was bringing into our business, into this podcast and everything else. And that was the moment that we really started shifting everything. We recorded one more podcast episode together, and that was the one where Dawn was saying goodbye. And since then, it's been me with guests, and Dawn has been also pulling back, and we've been extracting her from the other places that she was involved in the day-to-day of this infinite devotion business. And that was really necessary, and it's impacted our relationship and our Dom Sub dynamic in so many really, really positive ways that I haven't really had a chance to share with you. So that's what I'm here to do this week, and with this episode is just a bit of an update on us and what's going on with me as a dominant, with her as a submissive, and with how these dynamics are playing out in our life now. The place I want to start with this is that her knowing that she needed to be done was something that didn't make a ton of sense to us at the time. It didn't make a ton of sense to her. She definitely felt guilty about it, like she shouldn't want to be done. And this was infinite devotion was our baby. We came up with this together. We've built it together. I've obviously led in a lot of it, but she's been a part of it in different ways and to different extents over time. But when we launched the podcast, her involvement launched up quite a bit from where it had even been. And in a lot of ways that was necessary, and it was good. And I know it was very helpful to a lot of you who got to see what it's like for a woman who is coming into her submission, who is letting go of so much control and so much programming, and kind of the real vulnerability and openness that has had to be there between both of us in order for us to make this dynamic as real and as deep and as potent as it possibly can be. So when that feeling came through her that she just needed to be done, it didn't make a lot of sense. And there were parts of both of us that didn't really want that to be true, that still wanted to be able to have her be a part of it. But we're both smart enough now. We've experienced enough of life and of her opening and what it really means to listen to her intuition and follow that as guidance. That, first of all, it wasn't her telling me that I'm not going to be a part of it. That's what she liked to convince herself of, that she was telling me what to do or what she wasn't going to do, which didn't feel good to her because she wants to be the submissive. She doesn't want to tell me what to do. But at the same time, it's necessary for me to listen to that. And I had to remind her quite a bit, especially over the first month or two of her pulling back from this, that this is a good thing. You didn't tell me that you were going to be done. You shared some valuable information with me and I made a decision. And that's an important nuance for anyone who's trying to lead in a dominant submissive dynamic or in any kind of a masculine feminine polarity based relationship. Her feelings can't be the things that are telling you what to do and how to lead. They're really valuable information. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to follow. Sometimes it's really messed up with her own stories and with her own ego, and it's important and essential that you, as the masculine figure, as the dominant in that relationship, you have to know the difference in what it feels like when she's in an egoic resistance that you need to lead her past, and when she is speaking up for a very deep truth that you need to listen to and follow. It's a part of why we have to hone our sensitivity and open up our hearts if we want to lead a woman well in a way that helps us have power, but also values her feedback. We have to listen to her and really understand her. So, it became very obvious very quickly that she needed to be done when she shared this, and we started pulling her out of it. I had to reformulate how we did this podcast, which is what you've seen here over the last 3 or so months. I've been interviewing guests. I've been doing solo episodes. I have some other really fun things coming down the road with the podcast that I'm excited to share with you. And Dawn will poke her head back in here from time to time. We've already started discussing a little bit about how and when she's going to come back here. But the biggest reason why she needed to pull back from all of this is because authenticity is what built this business. Authenticity is what built Infinite Devotion into what it is. It's been us living our life, living our dynamic, living as a dominant and submissive in a 24/7 relationship, letting these power exchange dynamics be the foundation and groundwork and become that in our relationship, in our marriage of, almost 15 years now. We've allowed this dynamic to kind of become the bedrock and foundation for the entire relationship. And then Infinite Devotion and the Dom Sub Devotion podcast has been how we've shared the truth of what we're living. And what started to happen after we launched this podcast, and we did it for over a year together, and Dawn was also involved in helping me record some of the courses that we do, work with some of our one-on-one coaching clients. The dynamic that we were living got to be so much of the business and the relationship got too intermingled. They got too intermixed. And this was something on my part that I didn't probably see soon enough. Because when we turned off the camera for the podcast, or we ended a session with a client, or we were done recording for a course that we were putting together, what did we talk about? We were talking about clients. We were talking about the podcast episode and how it went. We would talk about what we were going to talk about in future podcasts. And then in the podcasts and in the coaching and in the courses, we were talking about our relationship. And so we found ourselves in a place where not just what we were sharing, but what was happening in between all the times that we were sharing was becoming very much over intellectualized. We were analyzing ourselves constantly for the cameras. And we were analyzing our relationship all the time. And it got to a point where we were finding there was less and less to share with you because so much of our time was spent sharing it. They merged and they got so overlapped. And that's a part of what led to the break where we needed to pull Dawn back out of this. Was we needed some separateness for us, for our dynamic, for our relationship, from the life of being public figures, of putting ourselves in front of the camera and sharing our life and our evolution, our constant evolution with you, which is something that we love and something we continue to do. But there had to be some separation. Something had to split apart there so that there was something to talk to you about. And that's the biggest benefit of having her pull back, has been now she and I are living our dynamic more again than we were before when we were just talking about it all the time. Because not only are we not talking about it on camera, because she's not involved with doing this podcast and because she's pulled back from doing the one-on-one coaching work, and we also finished up, and we are finishing up right now, the last bits of the last course that she has been a part of. And so, really right now I'm recording this on May 1st. It's going to be released next week. She's down to our last 2 live calls that we're doing for this course, Rapture. And then she'll be completely extricated from everything to do with the business. So that has helped to really bring our dynamic back to life. It's helped in so many ways. And it's helped her come alive in her submission. It's helped me come alive more in my dominance. And it's also helped our dynamic evolve really extraordinarily quickly over the last 4 months. And there's so much that's changed for us that I really realized that we haven't shared a lot with you. Because in part, we've been giving her time to just be. And some of you may know that we are full-time travelers now. I'm in an RV right now. We live in an RV. We travel around the country, and we are about to set out. By the time this episode comes out, when this is released, we will probably be somewhere on the road in New Mexico or Arizona. And we're leaving Texas and we're driving west, and we're starting to explore out west for the rest of this spring and the first part of summer. And there's really just been a lot of fun in our lives over the last few months, which has really been necessary. It's been the whole point of us leaving our home and doing this nomadic thing and exploring and traveling has been to have as much fun as we possibly can. So taking some of the pressure and stress off of her has really brought the fun out of her even more. So one of the things that I wanted to share with all of you today about where we are at and where our dynamic is at is that my growth as a dominant has been put on like turbocharge over the last 3 or 4 months, because now my leadership it's required more of me. It's required me to step up even more, to take over everything that this business is, everything we do with this podcast, and really setting her free to just be in herself. And I've had to grow very quickly because of that, but also because when she was set free from all of the stress and the analyzing and the intellectualizing of her submission, and really coming to just live her submission, she went deeper into it very quickly. And that has required so much more of me in being able to lead her. And that is kind of where we find ourselves now, is on this path and in this place where our whole dynamic is exploding into a completely different stratosphere. A lot of people found us and come to us because we've been able to talk about our dominant submissive dynamic without oversexualizing it. And we've done that very intentionally, but we've also done that because our dynamic really started a lot differently than a lot of people's do. First of all, I led Dawn into it, and in my experience now coaching people in this, about 90% of these dynamics seem to start with the woman who wants to be the submissive introducing this concept to a guy that she wants to do it with. Maybe her husband, maybe a new partner, whatever. But by and large, the women are the ones leading men into these dynamics, not the other way around. So that's the first part of what has made our dynamic a little bit different than a lot of people. The second one is that this started outside of the bedroom. For a lot of people, Dom Sub starts as a kink. It starts as a bedroom activity that you try to expand into other parts of life. And while I brought this to Dawn very much with the desire for the bedroom side of the dominant submissive dynamic, that part took a long time to really develop between us. A lot of these dynamics that we built between ourselves were outside of the bedroom. They were outside of sex. And even though, some people like to look at us and say, or assume that there's nothing kinky about us at all, which completely misses the boat, but it really wasn't based in kink. And the fact is that Dawn had so much repressed in herself that it was pretty tough to crack through bringing these dynamics into the bedroom. That's been one of the biggest challenges that we've faced as a couple, is we can do the leader-follower thing very well outside of the bedroom, and then inside was a whole different level. And that's where a lot of this trauma work has come in. It's where she's had to fight through and work through a lot of stuff for herself. I've had to work on a lot of my own shit too, to be more comfortable leading. Because keep in mind, we were a couple for 10 years before we ever started into these Dom Sub dynamics. So we had a lot of patterns very deeply established that have taken us years to unwind and redo and reprogram. So as Dawn's stress levels have dropped even farther, and as she has let go of even more of the ways that she was involved here, what's happened is the kink level of our Dom Sub dynamic has just kind of been the part that's exploded the most. And that's been in quite a few different ways, but it's mostly been due to the fact that I've had to step up in my leadership. I've had to I'm an even better dominant now than I was 4 months ago. Hands down. Because I've had her to lean on even less. I've had to really stand up in my own power even more in the way that I run this business, but also in the way that I lead her. Because she's more or less taken complete ownership of the sexual side of her submission, the obedient side, and given herself to me in a whole new way, which has been what I've wanted all along. But it's also been something that I've been trying to slow roll and pull out of her bit by bit over time. So taking the stress off of her has allowed her sexuality and the sexual side of our dynamic to really fill itself out and round this whole thing out for us in a way that is so much farther than it was just a few months ago. So for a long time, we talked about the relational side of dominant submissive dynamics, and I'll continue to do that. But it has also reached a point where for me to share this dynamic and the life that we're living together without sharing the sexual side, without sharing the kink side of it, is going to leave me with very little to talk about, because that has become more and more a central part of our dynamic in a way that it wasn't before. Our sex life has always been very good, but the dominant submissive dynamics and the sex have really come full circle and come together in a way that is new for us. So going forward, you're going to be hearing a lot more about the sexual side of our dynamic, and that is, it's by necessity, but it's also, it's something that's important, I think, because again, authenticity is the key to this whole thing. It's the reason we do this whole thing, is to share the real life of what we're living with you. And the real life of what we're living is becoming a highly sexual dynamic in entirely new ways for us. And this is probably, for those of you who wanted the update on Dawn's sexuality has gone into the stratosphere. She is a woman on fire. And that has been just remarkably fun for her to witness. Like, just watching her come alive in this and realize how much pleasure can really be there, how much she enjoys her submission, and really taking ownership of kink and of how big her sexuality is. So, without getting too much into details, there's going to be a lot more of what we do and what we share and what I bring here, but also as we expand and share our lives with you in new ways, there's going to be things that probably upset some people who have come to us because we do not or have not shared the sexual side of our dynamic before. And we are going to be doing that going forward in a variety of different ways. We haven't fully decided on all of those. The thing that I want to speak to about how I've had to grow as a dominant and really take ownership of is the way that for a long time I was probably too soft with her ego. We've talked a long time on here about patience and about compassion, and those have been incredibly necessary. So I want everyone to hear me clearly here when I share this, that I wouldn't change anything about how I've approached the first 6+ years of our dom-sub dynamic. It all was exactly the way that it needed to be. There was so much repression, there was so much suppressed, there was so much in her that needed to be handled with a lot of care in order for it to come to the surface in the way that it has now. And at the same time, we reached a point where we started cycling around the same resistance. And we hit almost a wall where we weren't going any farther because the same resistance kept coming up. And so I was eventually challenged to accept the fact that I had been too patient, that I'd become overly reliant on compassion, and I had not been bringing enough of my edge to her. I hadn't been bringing enough of my leadership to her. And that has led me to shift the way that I handle the times when she resists, specifically resisting the things that she wants or that we both know to be true or right. Places that we both want to go, but then she has the triggered flare-ups and the resistance that come up where she pushes back from the very thing that she wants. And what I've had to grow into, and I've had to develop a whole new sense of for myself, has been the ability to not back down when that resistance comes up. My tendency or habit had been to feel that resistance, to back off, to approach it with patience, with compassion, trusting her to find her way through it, and to take ownership in whatever way she needed to so she could set the resistance down and come forward with me. That stopped working. It was no longer serving the higher purpose of this dynamic. It wasn't serving the vision that I have for where I'm bringing us together. It wasn't in alignment with the values anymore. And those things are what I encourage everyone in these Dom sub dynamics to base your leadership on. You need to know what your North Star is. You need to know what you're doing this for. What's the whole point? Where are you going? And when I realized that my approach was not bringing us towards what I had envisioned as being possible for us and for our dynamic, I had to be willing to look at myself in the mirror and take a new level of ownership. So how I've had to shift and start to approach her resistance differently has been a willingness to face how I was uncomfortable when she got uncomfortable. There was at least a part of my meeting her resistance with compassion that was me not wanting to upset her. And I had to own up to the fact that I was not bringing all of myself in those places. I also had let the standards drop as to what I was willing to accept. And so I've raised the standard in this dynamic, the expectation of what our dynamic is going to look like, and of the level of submission and surrender I expect of her. So when she feels a resistance that's coming from a trigger, that's coming from her ego, that's coming from something that I'm very clear that it's not, like she's not bringing an authentic no to me. She's bringing and feeling some sense of a triggered reaction that's coming out as a no, is that I don't dive in there with her and meet and play in that with her anymore. I let her have that experience. I have compassion for her having the experience, but I am now waiting in the life that I'm creating for us and the dynamic and the relationship that I'm creating for us. I am holding myself in and to that standard, and I'm calling her forward into it, because it's not my standard that needs to drop because she's not ready to go there. The standard isn't the problem. If it's in line with the truth, if it's based on consent, and it is where we both want to go, the standard and the vision are not the problem. The ego is the problem. The resistance is the problem. So that is what I have allowed to burn off. And so, like, practically, tactically, what do I do when she has those things come up? is I let her feel them. But I stay grounded in who it is that we are becoming and where it is that I'm taking her. And then it's just an internal shift in me, in my solidity and my trust in myself and my trust in where I'm leading us. My knowing that it's right, that it's the right thing to do, it's the right place to be going. And I let her resistance basically burn itself out. So rather than going in there with her and playing in the realm of compassion that keeps us stuck, I'm having compassion for the experience that she's having while I am standing here holding the door open to the life that I'm building and creating for us. And that solidity, that edge, that difference, just that internal difference for me in holding that standard, in holding that vision in even higher regard, has softened something in her so much. And it's really let me see that a lot of, here's a uncomfortable truth. If you are a dominant who is trying to lead a submissive who is resistant to your leadership, what I thought was her resistance in a lot of cases was actually a mirror of my own hesitancy. It was actually her feeling uncomfortable going forward because I wasn't actually confident enough in where it was that I was taking her. So as I've become more confident in the rightness and the truth of where we're going in our dominant submissive dynamic, her resistance to it has just melted away. And from there is where all of this abundant sexuality and aliveness has really started to come through her and grow into something that is more like a wildfire than it is anything else. So as that has become more true, it's made it more obvious that sharing that side of our relationship is going to be an important and essential part of relaying the truth of what it is that we're living and how it is that our dynamic is playing out on a day-to-day basis. So you can expect to see more of that. Also, because we listen very closely to Dawn's intuition, to her desires, to what excites her as an important part of me having the information that I need to lead us forward. This isn't all just going to be me telling her what we're doing. A lot of this is being driven, and what I'm sharing with you here today is even coming from a lot of her intuition, from the things that are exciting her, the pieces of our relationship and of her life that she is excited to share and open up. And so as we are going forward in the parts of infinite devotion where Dawn starts to show back up, they're going to be really based on the things that she wants to bring. It's not going to be based on our analysis of our relationship anymore. It's going to be revealing to you the relationship that we're living. More of what our day-to-day of our dominant submissive dynamic is like. More of a peek inside. So we're excited to share that with you. And Dawn is excited to share all of that with all of our followers. And it's really been interesting how many new followers that we've been finding here just over the last several months. Our account has grown like gangbusters on Instagram and on YouTube just in the last several months that Dawn has been less involved with it. And it's been interesting to watch the little signs that we keep getting that we're on the right track. Like big explosions in followers. We had an Instagram reel go viral of Dawn that I think as of now has over 3 million views. A video of her just laughing when we were out on a date one night with a caption that really seems to have resonated with a lot of people and triggered the hell out of some people, by the way. Some people really, when a piece of content that you put on Instagram starts going beyond your normal audience, the people who already follow you or who already like things like what you do, and you start reaching out into a broader audience. Instagram kind of brands this as like something that the algorithm blesses and it gives it out to millions of people. You realize that you reach some people who are very, very unhappy with the fact that especially a dominant submissive couple in their 40s who dares to be like having fun with it. Like it's been pretty funny, all the kids in their 20s who are like, nobody wants to see middle-aged kinkstagram. Like, oh, you just hope that in 20 years you'll still be having as much fun as we are. I probably would have said the same thing when I was in my 20s. Like, I don't want to see people in their 40s talking about dom sub relationships and collars. Ew. So, I get it, but it's also been pretty funny to watch the people who don't normally interact with our content all of a sudden find it. And I love when they comment on it, because that just helps it spread even farther. It makes it look more interesting to Instagram's algorithm. So I do moderate those comments and I delete the mean ones. I block a lot of people on Instagram. There was a time on our Instagram account where I didn't have to block or really moderate much at all, because there was just nothing but love. There was nothing. When we were newer at this and we had 1,500 followers, and like people were just happy to find a relatively normal looking couple who lived a dom sub relationship that they could learn something from, it was all love. The haters really didn't start coming out until we hit like 30 or 40,000 followers, and then the haters really started to come to the surface. So there will only probably be more of that to come, because like I said, the universe keeps giving us these signs that we're on the right path. Our accounts are growing. People are resonating with our work more. Everything that we're doing just keeps working better. And I take all of that as a sign that we're on the right path. I look at dominant submissive dynamics really as an example of how to live abundantly. It's a freedom. It's a freedom of energy. It's a freedom for me to be the fullest, most powerful version of myself inside of this relationship. It's the freedom for Dawn to let go of control, to really surrender and submit. It is freeing up and living a life where there is no stress, there is no resistance, there's no tension between us at all. And it's an example of a wider potential of possibility in our lives. And so what's been really interesting to watch is how this has played out for us in other non-sexual, non-relational parts of our lives, watching abundance flow in our lives, how we have more fun on a day-to-day basis. We laugh more. We make more money. We appreciate our lives so much more. Like everything starts to just work better when you take your foot off of the brake. When I say take your foot off of the brake pedal that we had our foot on really was all of the internal stuff that you've heard us talk so much about letting go of and healing from. When we've done so much of that work and we reached a point where a lot of that stuff is gone and we're living just in a very free flow of energy, both with each other, but even more so and more importantly, internally in ourselves. The abundance that has started to flow through our lives in other parts of our lives has been fascinating to watch. And I can only imagine that that continues to happen as long as we stay in the truth. And I know, again, some of you that came to us because we didn't sexualize our relationship. We didn't talk about kink. We talked about the relational side of this. I completely understand that as we start sharing more of the other side of our relationship, it is going to challenge some of you and the reason that you came to us in the first place. But keep in mind that this is a part of the overall intimacy and what the deep intimacy of these relationships make possible is an intense sexuality. It's an intense sexual relationship and a deeply intimate emotional relationship. It's both. If you've ever read my PDF on polarity, the whole point, the reason that I even wanted this dynamic in the first place is because I've never been willing to live in a world where I can't have the closest, most intimate relationship and the best possible sex with the same person. I don't want to live in a world where those two things can't be possible with the person that I love the most. And so a lot of this work has been driven for me by finding out what it is that makes that possible and making that come to life. And one of the best ways that we get evidence of this is when Dawn and I are just out in public. When we go out to see live music, for example, and we're dancing together, I bet it happens a couple times a month where we will get somebody who comes up to us like, you guys are so, like, you're so into each other. Are you newlyweds? And when we tell them we've been together for 16 years, you just watch their minds go, like their brains explode, because people don't even consider the possibility that you can be really, really fucking into each other after having been together for that long. So everything that we do and everything that we teach makes both of these parts of the relationship work well. It's the emotional connection that feeds the sexual connection, and it's the sexual connection that feeds the emotional connection. And the problem that a lot of people have in relationships is that they think if they get the emotional thing right, therefore the sexual just has to take care of itself. Or if the sex is good, then love comes around. And these are two separate things that have to be curated and worked on individually. So for us to continue to speak only about the emotional side and the non-sexual side of this dynamic really isn't doing any favors to anyone that we're teaching. And it also less and less makes it possible for me to share this dynamic with you with authenticity. So with all of that being said, there has been a lot that has been going on in our lives, in our relationship, and there will be lots more coming and lots more to share, and we're excited to share it with you. And in the meantime, we really do appreciate all of you, and we appreciate the ways that you have continued to support us and to encourage us and to be a part of this whole journey for us, because it's so damn special for us that we get to live our lives and share them with you, and that we get to do that as the way that we make a living. Our life really is our business, and our business is our life. And yeah, we're extraordinarily grateful. Every single day we're grateful for the fact that this is how we get to live our lives. And that is completely and totally because of the support that all of you give us. So I'll end this relatively short solo episode with one last little commercial here, that we have a couple of really, really great courses that are coming out. Things that I've been working on for quite a while that are going to be of a lot of help for couples and for men and women both individually. So stay tuned to our account this year. If you're not already, please hit the show notes and subscribe to our email list. I would hate to ever lose contact with you just because one of these platforms gets taken down. You never know when social media can blow up. So if you're not on our email list, please get your name on our email list. We want to be able to stay in touch with you, and we look forward to sharing more of our lives with you. So thanks again for being here. Appreciate you, and more Dom Sub Devotion coming next week.